What's going on, guys? It's your boy Nick, finally back on the channel. I know it's been a long time. I do want to apologize for the lack thereof of content on my channel. I've just been busy with all the holidays and work and family stuff going on. I had wanted to record some live duel videos for you guys to put on the channel so you guys could see some of the decks that I've brought to you in profiles in action. However, my accomplice, I guess you could say, one of my close friends who I like to record content with for the channel actually ended up coming down with COVID. So then he was in quarantine and it was just a lot going on. So I do want to apologize for the lack of content on the channel. And that's why I couldn't be more excited to bring you a video finally before the end of the year. I want to say, hopefully everyone had an amazing holiday and hopefully everyone has a fantastic new year this upcoming year. A couple things I want to point out is if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please help me out. Hit that subscribe button. I promise you guys I'm going to be coming really strong in 2023 with insane amounts of content for you guys. I'm really going to be working hard so I can get to that 1,000 subscriber benchmark, and I can't get there without your guys' help. As you guys probably saw in the title of the video, I took MYUTANT GHOTI to locals and took top 8 with it. It was a pretty sweaty event. Pretty much everybody was playing like meta-relevant strategies or really strong rogue decks. I ended up taking 7th. It was a 24-man tourney, and honestly, I'm really pleased with the result. The funny thing about this is despite me not having a steady flow of content for you guys on the channel, I've still been doing a lot of work on my decks behind the scenes. Doing deck updates and just testing and trying to optimize stuff as much as possible. So this actually is an updated MYUTANT GHOTI deck list from the one that I brought to the channel previously. And we're going to just pretty much breeze through the deck because I'm sure you guys already know what most of the cards do. If you don't, I would encourage you to watch some of the older videos that I've uploaded regarding this deck, because I go in more deeper depth regarding what the cards do and how they work. I even have a test hand video on my channel as well, which I'll leave a link in the description down below. But I got, like I said, I top 8'd my locals, and I'm really happy with the overall deck's performance. And like I said, I just wanted to put a video out there for you guys, for your enjoyment and entertainment. And I know that a lot of you like my MYUTANT GHOTI deck list, and I'm sure you're curious to see how I've ended up optimizing it even further. The deck is finally an even 40 cards. You'd love to see it. It's really cool. Like I said, having the deck as at an even 40, it can't be any more consistent than it already is. So with that being said, guys, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's dive in to this meta contending MYUTANT GHOTI deck list, because it truly is an amazing feat. So we're going to start the things off a little bit differently here. We're going to go through the entire MYUTANT package first and then go into the GHOTI package, but per usual, we're on triple copies of MO5. MO5 is obviously your starter, helps you get into your boss monsters as well, and then we're also on triple copies of MYUTANT ST46. So combined, both of these cards are your 2 separate starters for the theme. MO5 searches monsters on summon, ST46 searches mutant spells and traps, both of which also get you to your mutant boss monsters, which are Beast, Mist, and Arsenal, which we are playing in this deck list, so I couldn't be happier with the ratios. MO5 being at level 2 is nuts with the Sprite Elf synergy. All 3 of these cards, or 6 of these cards, excuse me, are Psychic type, and they're level 3 or lower, so they are E-Telly targets, which is really strong. Moving on, though, we're on 2 copies of MYUTANT as the extender in this deck. So one of the Achilles heels of MYUTANT specifically was the fact that it was very easy to disrupt, because all they had was their normal summon usually, and if that got snuffed, you had no way to push through that. This card is here to change all of that. It's not necessarily a starter like MO5 or ST46 are. However, he still can get you into a mutant boss and can do it as a 1-card engine on his own, which is really insane. So 2 copies of MYUTANT. Now moving on to the mutant boss monsters. We're still on the 2 Beast, 1 Arsenal, and 1 Mist. Like I said, I swear by this ratio. I don't think I will ever change it. Having the 2 Beasts in the deck is really crucial, given that this is a GHOTI variant of MYUTANT, and we tend to want to banish monsters as our cost to obviously trigger the GHOTI effects. So when we banish a monster with our MYUTANT starters, we're allowed to summon MYUTANT Beast from hand or deck. So that's why we're on 2 copies of him, because Beast is the one that comes up the most. He's also a spell negate, which is nuts. Beast came in so clutch. I actually, during the tournament, one of my opponents was playing the Draco Slayer deck, and holy crap, that deck is insane. I ended up taking the game from him, but Mutant Beast was pivotal in that particular matchup, which was awesome. We still have the Arsenal and then one miss. I don't understand why people choose not to play this card. This card is still nuts. It is a wind. We have Flew Under, still running rampant in the format. So if you get Wind Barrier statue locked, you can still summon this under the Wind Barrier statue, which is nuts. And also against your back row heavy decks like Labyrinth, which are the first deck that comes to mind that plays a heavy amount of traps. This card is literally a pot of greed every time they activate a trap. Even against your Tier Element deck, because Tier Element, they play Sulliek and whatnot. This card, whenever your opponent activates a trap, lets you draw 2 cards. What's not to like about this? It's automatically a shoo-in, in my opinion. Very strong cards in their own respect. Beast is a spell negate. Arsenal is a monster banish, and Miss lets you pot of greed pretty much every time your opponent uses a trap card or trap effect. All of which are very easy to summon off of your mutant starters. Then moving into the mutant spells. 2 copies of Evolution Lab, 1 copy of Mutant Fusion. Evo Lab is really, really strong in this deck because upon activation, it lets you special summon a level 4 or lower mutant that's either in your hand or that's banished. So this can also function as a pseudo extender for you in case your opponent tries to disrupt you, which is really nice. In addition to giving your mutant monsters a marginal attack buff, which does come up every once in a while. But the main effect of this card also is it lets you mulligan a mutant monster in your hand to get a free draw. So if you draw into like your level 8s, which you usually don't want to draw, you can actually reveal it, place it on the bottom of the deck, and then draw a fresh card. It's really strong for the field spell, in my opinion. Then we play the 1 Mutant Fusion, just like any other typical fusion spell, but it lets you banish the material from hand or field to fusion summon. However, if your opponent has activated any card or effect during your turn, you can actually use up to 1 material each from your deck and graveyard. So this card comes up only after your opponent has like hand trapped you or something like that. So that's why we only play the 1 of. But overall, it's still pretty strong. And these are literally the only mutant spells that we play, or mutant-related spells we play. Then moving on to the mutant traps, we are on triple copies of Mutant Cry and 1 expansion. Cry is actually the card you're going to be using the most to fusion summon. Think of Mutant Cry as like not Scareclaw. What am I thinking? Tri Brigade. Think of the Mutant Cry as Tri Brigade Revolt. Because pretty much this card lets you fusion summon during the opponent's main phase. Because obviously it's a trap card, so you can use it as during their turn. But it lets you fusion into a mutant fusion by shuffling the material from among the cards on your field, graveyard, or banished. So this is really nice. Not only do you get a really cool boss monster, but you get to recycle all of your mutant bosses like Beast, Miss, Arsenal back into the deck. So your mutant starters constantly have bosses to summon out of deck. So this card really applies a lot of pressure to the opponent. Very strong card, and that's why we play 3 of it. And then we cut expansion from a 2 of to a 1 of, just because we... You'll see later in the deck profile, we are playing triple E-Telly, which can get us to our mutant starters. Expansion is pretty much like an in-archetype emergency teleport. However, it is a trap, so it's a bit slow. But pretty much upon activation of this card, you can either add to your hand or special summon a level 4 or lower mutant from deck, which is nice. Then while it's on the field, because it is continuous, if a level 8 or higher mutant you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. So it's got an interesting protection effect, but as a 1 of, I think the card is perfectly fine. Again, we got the deck down to an even 40 cards, so it's super consistent. So that marks one of the first changes that we've made to the list, but that rounds out all the mutant-related support. Now we're going to start talking about the GHOTI support, or GHOTI-related stuff. So we're playing triple copies of Lifeless Leaffish. We were previously running this card as a 2 of, and I just decided that Lifeless Leaffish is pretty much a starter for the whole GHOTI line, so why not just max out on it? And that's exactly what we did. So we play 3 copies of Leaffish now. I do want to apologize for the common that I have here. I do have a third ultra rare Leaffish coming in the mail. It just hasn't shown up yet, and I didn't want to wait for it to come before making this video. Turns out that ultra rares from Rise of the Duelist are pretty hard to come by, given that Rise, number 1, was a really insane set. It came out at the peak of COVID, and the set itself was shorted. Like, a lot of people who allocated boxes ended up not getting as many as they ordered because Konami just couldn't keep up with the demand. So it was a whole shit show, for lack of a better word. But I do have a ultra rare Leaffish coming, so worry not, my rarity folk who are constantly always trying to play max rarity of their stuff. But Leaffish is great. When it's summoned, you just send a fish monster from your deck to the graveyard, and we'll get into what that monster is shortly. But we cut paces down from a 3 of to a 2 of. just because Paces alone is not really a starter in this deck, you just wanted to see Paces because you want to banish it off of your mutant effects, like for cost. So we cut it down to a 2 of to help boost consistency, and then we also play 2 copies of Schiff, Fairy of the Ghoti. Schiff is actually the one that you want to send to the graveyard off of the summon of Leapfish, which is really, really strong because Schiff out of the graveyard can banish itself, which is really nice. And then obviously when the Ghotis are banished, they come back in the following standby. And if they're summoned during the opponent's turn by any means, they can quick sync into Fish Synchros, which is nice. Then to round out the Ghoti monster package is 1 copy of Zep and 1 copy of Snopios. Zep and Snopios are still fine as 1-ofs in this deck because they do come up enough that I still feel like it's worth playing. Zep comes up really strong in the Arion Post combo, which you can access through the Leaffish line, which is nuts. So Zep's really nice to have as a 1-of, and then Snopios is honestly a really strong Ghoti non-tuner, but because this isn't a pure Ghoti deck, I just feel like playing more than 1 Snopios can end up being a bit bricky. So as a 1-of, Snopios is really, really great. But like I said, this deck is super consistent now, and it definitely puts up some amazing boards. Like I said, I topped my locals with this deck, and the locals was extremely sweaty because there was some interesting pricing, so everyone brought the sauce that day apparently because, man, was I having, like, just, it was insane. But anyway, so that rounds out the Ghoti package. We're not playing any of the Ghoti spells or traps. Again, this is not a pure Ghoti deck list. You're mainly using the Ghotis as cost to banish off of your mutant effects, and there's just really good synergy there. It's like mutants needed good cards to banish, but then Ghotis needed strong ways to banish themselves that, like, didn't suck, basically. So the 2 engines combine, and they kind of fill each other's gaps, so to speak, and it ends up turning out pretty nice. So, but moving on to our generic cards that we play, we're on triple copies of Emergency Teleport, like I stated before. This just further increases the consistency of your mutant plays because all of your mutant starters, literally Mutant, MO5, and ST46, are all level 3 or lower psychics. So E-Telly is just additional ways to get to those starters and more ways for you to play through Disruption and hand traps, which is really strong. So can't stress how good E-Telly is in this deck as a 3-of. Then of course we're on the 1 called by because we hate hand traps, so we want to make sure that we have ways to play through that. Then we are on 2 copies of Draco Utopian Aura. This card is really strong. I don't think playing 3 of it makes sense, just because, like, you know, you don't want to brick on this card, but when you do draw this, it's actually really insane. It's pretty much like a solemn strike that you don't have to pay for, and has the additional benefit of allowing you at resolution to banish a monster from your hand, which is great because if you banish a Ghoti, obviously it comes back in the next standby, so it's not even like you're losing value on that exchange. But if you banish a monster from hand, you can special summon the monster that you negated and destroyed with this to your side of the field. Its effects are negated, but you get to keep it permanently and do whatever you want with it. So 2 copies of Draco Utopian Aura are really strong. It's a counter trap as well, so the opponent has a very hard time responding to that. Then, to round out the deck, again, the deck list is at 40 cards. We are playing 6 hand traps. So we're on 2 copies of Bestial Druisworm, 1 Magnamut, and then, of course, we are playing triple copies of Infinite Impermanence to round out the main deck. Again, the main deck is now sitting at a nice and clean 40 card count. The Bestials in this deck actually have a lot of synergy with the Ghotis because obviously they're pretty much like DD Crows on legs. And you're able to quick effect special them by disrupting, like, your opponent's plays, like banishing lights or darks out of their graveyard, and then combine them with Ghotis, and you're able to quick sync into level 8 synchros. And then if you use a card like Druisworm as synchro material, for example, and it goes to the graveyard, you get the Druisworm's grave effect on top of getting a level 8 synchro for your troubles. So overall, really strong. We just play 6 hand traps in this list, and given that the deck's at 40 cards, it's pretty consistent when you see your hand trap. So again, that's rounds out the main deck. It is a 40 card list. Like I said, I took it to my locals recently, and I did top 8 the locals event. I took 7th place officially. Went up against matchups like Fluunderies. Went up against decks like the Draco Slayers, which are nuts. Went up against Tearlament. I also, one of my matchups was actually an opponent playing the Naturia Ishizu, which, I'm going to be honest, I was kind of sleeping on that deck, man. But after seeing it, that deck is nuts. It really gave me a good run for my money, in all seriousness. But moving on to the extra deck. I did make some minor tweaks to this list, to the extra deck, so you guys are about to see that here. We are still on the 2 Synthesis, 1 Ultimus for our Mutant Fusion infusion monsters that we run. Synthesis is just overall a really well-rounded boss, being able to pop any card on the field upon its fusion summon, and then as a quick effect, it can make itself immune to any card type, monster, spell, or trap that's activated by your opponent until the end of the turn. So like, if you summon this, for example, and you target like a set back row and they chain it and it's a trap card, let's say it's like Dogmatic of Punishment, you can chain the Synthesis in response to the punishment. So that would, Chainlink 1 would be the pop, Chainlink 2 would be punishment, and then Chainlink 3 would be synthesis. And he becomes unaffected by trap cards for the rest of the turn. So then the punishment just kind of fizzles. And I guess punishment's a bad example, because if they send Entis, then Entis can trigger to pop this. But you get what I mean. Like, this thing can make itself immune to specific card types as a quick effect, which makes it really annoying to deal with. And the fact that it floats is also a nice plus. Then we have the one Ultimus. Pretty much if you make this, you're guaranteed to win. This thing's pretty much like an Invoked Mechaba, but way better, and on a bigger body at 3,500. So it's a negate and banish, but the cost to activate is so simple. You just banish any mutant card that's either in your hand, field, or graveyard of the same card type of the card you're trying to stop. So if they activate a spell card, then you banish a mutant spell from your hand, field, or graveyard, and then negate and banish that spell. And then this thing also floats just like Synthesis does if it dies. So overall, two great boss monsters there. Then for our Synchro line, we're playing one copy of Arion Post, one White Aura Dolphin for our level 6 Synchros. Pretty much really strong. Arion Post has like an insane combo. He can pretty much get you 2 other tuners and allow you to sync into a level 8 Ghoti, which just adds further chaos to what's going on. And then White Aura Dolphin's nice, just being able to debuff opponent's monsters. And then when it does get killed, it can banish a water from grave to revive itself. And then at that point, it's treated as a tuner, which is really cool. And that revive effect is not once per turn, so something to keep in mind. Then for our level 8 Synchros, we play one Ascan the Bicorn Ghoti, one Google Him, and one Adamancipator Risen Dragite. Obviously, we can make these during the opponent's turn. Dragite is something that we can make during our turn when we're not like strictly relegated into making fish synchros. We can make the Dragite, which is obviously a spell trap negate, and since all of our mutant starters are water and the Ghotis are water, Dragite's negate is usually always live. The Google Him actually came up during the tournament. I actually used this to deal with a access code that was made with an IP Masquerena. So the Google Him was actually a really funny out to that. The opponent pretty much scooped right after I activated the effects. That was pretty satisfying, if I say so myself. Then for our level 10s, we play one Ghoti the Deep Beyond and one Supreme Sovereign Chenging. We cut Deep Beyond from a 2-of to a 1-of. Simply put, because I feel like I don't really make this card as often as I initially thought I would. It's still a great card, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel like playing 2 of it makes sense. Because I think if you can resolve at least one of this card, I don't think you'll ever need the second one, if that makes any kind of sense. So we cut it in favor of something else, which you'll see shortly. And then we also play the Chenging. Again, we make this during our turn when we're not locked into fish synchros. The Chenging is obviously just a house and has really great inherent synergy with mutants, given that they all banish for cost for their effects. So very easy to trigger the Chenging's effect to banish one on field and grave. Then we do play a 1 copy of End Punisher, just because it's a badass generic 11 synchro we can go into using a Ghoti and Mutant Synthesis. Then we play a 1 copy of Dingirsu, again just a generic rank 8 that we can go into, offering us non-target, non-destruction removal. And then for our links, we play 1 Sprite Elf, 1 Irio the Water Charmer, that's very strong generic link 2s. Elf in this deck, because Mutant MO5 is a level 2, and all of the Ghoti tuners are level 2s, just has insane synergy in this deck, so we always go into Elf lately, and Elf puts in so much work. There's even instances where, like, I normal MO5, it gets impermed, then I'm special, like Mutant, link them off into an Elf, and then Elf effect bring back the MO5, and I can still use the MO5 secondary effect to bring out a Mutant boss, which is great. And then Irio is just nice, just being a generic water link 2, and then if the opponent outs her, she literally searches us any Mutant starter or any Ghoti we want. So that's also equally dope. Then for our last extra deck monster, we play, new to the extra deck, a copy of Borlo Dragon. This card is actually we can make this pretty easily in this deck because of how much we spam monsters out to the board now, especially with the help of the Bestials. But we go into this as a way to get around Baguska. Because obviously, if you think about it, Baguska is pretty much hard counters most rogue strategies. And the only out that we have to Baguska is like opening Imperm, pretty much. Because like outside of that, we really don't have a good way to deal with it. So if we can make a link that's big enough to beat over it, I figured that's just a way that we can get around it. So we play the 1 Borlo Dragon. in the extra deck. It did not come up during the tournament, but during testing, it has come up, and I find that it's still an insane card after all this time. So that rounds out the extra deck, guys. And then real quick, I'm going to show you guys the side deck, because I did optimize that as well. So before we wrap things up, so for the side, we actually play a small Gamma package. We just play 2 Gamma, 1 driver. We could play 3 Gamma, but side deck space in this is a little tight, so we're just on the 2 Gamma, 1 driver. We pretty much side into this when the Bestials are not relevant for the matchup we're going up against. So like against Fluunder or like a water focused deck like Marincess, for example, obviously they're not going to put a light or dark in the graveyard most of the time, so the Bestials are kind of dead. So post game 1, we'll side out of the Bestials, side into this, because Gamma is still an insane hand trap, and because we main deck E-Tellies, Gamma has more utility being able to be summoned out of deck as a level 2 tuner for pretty much free. So Gamma is always nice. We're on triple Dark Ruler no more, just to help us going second, break boards. Triple copies of Mystical Space Typhoon, just to help us clear those pesky back row decks that we might come across. Then we're on 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, because it helps going second, makes going second a lot easier, which is awesome. And then speaking of going second, we sideboard 1 Mind Control, 1 Change of Heart. I'm not even kidding, guys. I sided into these cards during that tournament against the Draco Slayer player. I went second. He literally ended on an Appaloosa and a Bagooska pass. I shit you not, not only did I open the Mind Control, but I drew the Change of Heart as my 6th card. Almost lost my shit. I cannot tell you the satisfaction I had of being able to Mind Control the Appaloosa and then Change of Heart the Bagooska. The opponent was so tilted. It was just great. Like, honestly, these cards are nuts going second. And then whatever you take off of them, you're able to banish for cost for your mutant starters to summon your boss monster. So that's really cool. Something to keep in mind. And then we also play 2 Crackdown in the side for when we know we're going to go first. We can side into these and then set these in the back row, and these are just additional disruptions the opponent can play through. And then again, the monster that we steal from them, we can actually banish as cost for our mutant effects, whether that be for our starters or our mutant bosses. So something to keep in mind. But that rounds out the side deck, guys. 15 card side. And like I said, that's pretty much it for the updated list. I didn't want to make this video too long, but thank you guys so much for staying committed to the channel. Like I said, I do want to apologize for the lack of content, but I assure you, come 2023, I'm going to be bringing you guys some of the spiciest content possible. I actually have updates in the works for Evil Eye Labyrinth, which I did have a profile uploaded for, as well as Ninja Crawler. I know a lot of people were excited to see the test hand video. I never got around to making it, but that's only because I've been optimizing that deck as well, and I figured let me just wait until I finish my changes, and then I'll bring you guys a brand new profile with a test hand video and whatnot. So stay tuned. Like I said, I will bringing you guys really great and unique content. So if you haven't subscribed and you're watching this video, please subscribe. And like I said, feel free to check out some of my other videos, because I'm sure there's something that you guys will like. Happy holidays and Happy New Year, and God bless you all.